Okay, so we talked about this the other day because we saw Andrew Yang was running for mayor of New York City. Um, so I figured, hey, let's look at who else is running for mayor of New York City. Okay. Here we go. Okay, here's who we got. We got first up, we got Scott Stringer, current job city comptroller, age 60. Um, he represents the Upper West Side, or he did anyway, and was a city financial watchdog, or has been basically the city comptroller since 2013. He advocates for a wide array of issues like affordable housing, gun control, women's reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, campaign finance reform. Um, and he does some stuff on Twitter and like sued Mayor de Blasio and shit. And he's basically considered. I looked into him a little bit. He's decent, but he's really one of the more moderate progressives in the race. I would describe him as like kind of lefty Democrat, as opposed to like a lefty progressive. Um, so he got some heat for approving some large scale real estate projects. So Warren-ish, yeah, that's kind of how he comes off to me. Shuffle Kitty the cat. Eric Adams, not I'm not a fan of this guy. Age 60, Brooklyn Borough president currently. A resume high points, entered politics after a 22 career with the NYPD, co-founded 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, a group that spoke out against police brutality from inside the force while he was an officer. He himself was beaten by cops as a teenager. In 2006, he was elected to the Slate Senate, repping neighborhoods such as Crown Heights, Brownsville, and Park Slope for 4 terms before becoming borough president in 2013. So, first off, he's a cop, not a real big selling point on the left. And also 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care seems really ineffective. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that like making a group that is called that and maintaining your job as a police officer means that you weren't really shaking the boat, you know? While serving as the cheerleader in chief for Brooklyn, he has cultivated a reputation as a champion for immigrant communities and the needs of small businesses and has been unabashedly pro development, adopting former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin's drill baby drill line into build baby build mantra. He's checking all the boxes here. Yeah. As a former cop, he has nuanced views on police reform and can perhaps build a coalition of Black New Yorkers and more conservative white voters. Yeah. His platform has so far zeroed in on public safety and revitalizing the economy. He lives in his office, so that's good, I guess. Anyway, moving on. This one is a little bit better, though. I think Maya Wiley is a little Warren-y as well. Okay, that's where I'm going to be here. Latest job, senior vice president of social justice and professor of urban policy at the New School. Resume high points, she's a former top counsel for Mayor Bill de Blasio and a one-time civil rights attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union and the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. She's also former chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, the body that weighs claims of misconduct against NYPD officers. She gained a national reputation as a political and legal analyst for MSNBC. Are they related to Dr. Wiley? No comment. Combating systemic racism and police brutality are her bread and butter. So she announced that she was thinking of running for mayor 3 months after the killing of George Floyd, and basically positioned herself, a Black woman, as an avatar for addressing the city's racial and economic inequalities. And she was endorsed by Mary Trump. Good night, Arcus Incus. You get some good sleep, okay? Hopefully we hang out tomorrow. I'm not particularly thrilled by, like, she has a very impressive resume, but it seems impressive in the way that, like, liberal lefties tend to be impressive when they run for office, you know? Sean Donovan, I'm met on this one, okay? Senior strategist to president of Harvard University. Donovan was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and Director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Obama, and was the administration's point man for Hurricane Sandy recovery efforts. He's Commissioner of the Department of Housing Preservation and Development under Mayor Michael Bloomberg's administration. He does prioritize climate change, which is nice. He has a pretty detailed policy plan. But it basically boils down to, hey, we need to make new construction better and change how buildings operate and update them. IP a lot. We're looking at people running for mayor of New York City. Catherine Garcia. Yeah, I'm just like I'm not like into this, aside from like the climate change changes, but I think that could be like subsumed into literally any of these people's plans. New York City Sanitation Commissioner under Mayor de Blasio. Garcia wore many hats during the de Blasio administration. Aside from her day job of overseeing trash and snow clearing, she was tasked with leading the city's efforts to abate leaded paint exposure in children, named interim chair and CEO of the New York City Housing Authority for part of 2019, also served as the city's emergency food czar this year to combat food insecurity for New Yorkers during the pandemic. She's credited with the big reforms in the city's sanitation system, overseeing an overhaul to the chaotic private carting industry, as well as the creation of curbside electronics waste disposal program and expansion of composting. She's casting herself as the crisis manager that New York City needs during the pandemic recovery. I think she's pretty good. That's kind of where I'm at, but so far out of all of them, I like her the most, but we'll continue here. Now we got this motherfucker. Ray McGuire, Vice Chair of Citigroup. McGuire is a total newcomer to city politics. AKA, he's just a rich guy who's doing the rich guy thing. In order to run, he's leaving his position as one of the highest-ranking and longest-serving black executives on Wall Street. He's used his position to advocate on racial justice issues, which is nice, within the corporate world, and has called on executives to do more in combating systemic racism. He really doesn't have much to him aside from rich guy, okay? Can we not have Citigroup people in office? You know, that'd be nice. That'd be nice. All right. Lori Sutton, New York City's Veterans Service Commissioner under de Blasio. Retired Brigadier General, served as the Army's highest-ranking psychiatrist. She did a tour in Egypt and also serving in Iraq during the Gulf War. Back in New York, Sutton played a key role in growing the Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs into a full-blown city department under de Blasio. Basically advocates for veterans and opposes defunding the police. Part of that is great. Another part is bad. You found a Hollow Terror deck. It's the best thing ever. Hell yeah, Lady Rain-Cloud. Zach Iskol, and another very meh candidate. Marine Corps veteran turned entrepreneur. Co-founded and served as former chairman of the Headstrong Project, nonprofit providing mental health services to veterans. Started Task and Purpose, military-focused digital media company. He was deputy director of the temporary hospital at the Javits Center last spring. I mean, that's cool. Yeah, I'm not too impressed, okay? However, this guy, Carlos Menchaca, seems pretty cool and based. City council member for Brooklyn's 38th district, which includes Sunset Park, Red Hook, and Windsor Terrace. He's named LGBTQ and HIV community liaison to former city council speaker Christine Quinn, and was budget coordinator to former Brooklyn Borough President Marty Markowitz. Pet issues: Menchaca is known for his focus on immigrant communities, a chair of the council's Committee on Immigration, helped pass the city's ID NYC program, which made identification card available to city residents regardless of immigration status, and secured funding for legal representation for immigrants facing deportation, and has worked to limit city cooperation with federal immigration enforcement officials. He's also known as a transit advocate and has been particularly vocal on improving city's bike infrastructure. He's a staunch progressive who would be the city's first Latino and openly gay mayor. Menchaca recently drew citywide attention for opposing a proposed rezoning for Industry City that the developers ultimately scrapped. The years-long saga over the redevelopment of the Sunset Park complex may have scored him some points with progressive activists, but likely made him enemies among city's development and business interests. And then the other real good one that I see going here is Diane Morales, executive director and CEO of social services nonprofit FIPS Neighborhoods. She's a founding board member of Jumpstart, a 25-year-old national nonprofit that prepares preschoolers for kindergarten. Platform is ardently progressive with ideas like community control of New York City Housing Authority, defunding the NYPD, and enacting a guaranteed minimum income for all city residents. I think she's my favorite out of all of them. Her platform seems to be real nice, real good. I like it. She seeks to become the city's first Afro-Latina mayor and has cast herself as a community-centric candidate whose advocacy and social justice will elevate the voices of the city's marginalized. Bed-Stuy Strong, Morales continues to live in Bedford Stuyvesant. I probably butchered that, where she was born and raised, and has been working with the local mutual aid network during the pandemic. Like, that's fucking cool. I like this a lot. I like her platform. I like her like gumption, and I hope that she does very well. Basically, I would put my my 2 cents behind these two. Okay, Diane Morales and Carlos Menchaca. And then we got Curtis Sliwa, who is a crazy person, self-appointed crime fighter, aka the CEO and founder of Guardian Angels and radio talk show host. The Canarsie native founded his watchdog group in 1979, enlisting unarmed volunteers to patrol the streets and subways, wearing their signature red jackets and berets. It's all about being tough on crime and getting attention for it. Sliwa has cast himself as the law and order candidate with plans to reinvigorate the NYPD. He survived being shot at point-blank range in the back of a taxi, an attack thought to be the work of the Gambino crime family scion John Gotti. And then you got Andrew Yang. And then we have a few people who are possibly running, and people who dropped out of the race. So yeah, these are who we got so far. And Andrew Yang held a town hall that we're going to watch. Oh my gosh, it's so quiet. What the hell? Maybe we're not going to watch this. It's like aggressively quiet.
We dropped a website.
Oh, there we
with
go.
Just the beginning of Andrew's policies this morning.
Smarksis, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. We just finished going over the people running for New York City mayor, and we're going to watch town hall for Andrew Yang, and chill.
Conference full of press at Morningside Park. Thousands of people were watching that live stream. And we also were able to announce Richie Torres' endorsement. So exciting. I hope you guys caught them together on Andrew's IG. And what did he go to next? He headed over to Queens. After he was with Richie in the Bronx, he headed over to Queens, and he was with Donovan Richards. And then he finished out the day there in Brooklyn with Latrice Walker. How exciting. I mean, 24 hours. That's all that we accomplished. It's amazing. I think we are going to see a phenomenal campaign that you have never seen before. I'm so excited to be here to introduce to you people that are of New York City. We have a team here of folks in the room in the live town hall as we do things virtually these days.
Thanks, the Smarksis.
Just wanted to give a little wave to the audience. All right, Yang Gang. It's a very exciting time for us. We are starting a new campaign, a new day. And if you aren't yet Yang Gang, hopefully after this live stream you will be. It's very exciting to be starting another campaign. It's just a wonderful time to get New York back connected to something. You know, like I know we've all been struggling. It's been a hard, 2020 was a hard time. It was definitely, I know it was for me. I'm sure it was for you.
I don't know anything about Richie Torres.
But, you know, with Andrew coming out to campaign and talk about the things that he thinks will make this city.
American are... Oh. One second.
Revitalized, grow, bring back business, get all of Broadway back in business. I mean, these are things that are important for the economy. They're important for us. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all the 5 boroughs. If you are in New York right now, you're in one of the 5 boroughs, put it in the chat. We want to see who's here from what borough. Let us know right now. Throw it in there. Yeah, so we've got Queens. Who's anybody here from Sunset Park? Brooklyn, who's in the house? Bronx, woo, thank you. I love all the familiar faces. I love seeing Yang Gang again. You guys have come through, and I just want to tell you, we have a spectacular volunteer program for everyone to get involved in. And what we're doing this time, we're doing relational organizing. I'm going to talk about that at the end a little bit more.
He didn't have the 70% of gun control policies?
That makes each and every one of you somebody that could reach out to your neighbors.
Oh, it's Marxist. We're watching it at
family.
increased
Even if you're not
speed.
in New York, we're going to set that up so all of you can be involved in our campaign. So I really suggest strongly that you go to our Mobilize page and sign up for the first orientation this
Yeah, this is
Sunday.
at 1.5 speed, so that it doesn't take an hour to get through this video.
To be excited about, but I think what's going to happen now, if I'm not mistaken, is we at the right time for it. We have a special video for you. I don't think I should even introduce it. I think it'll speak for itself. So without further ado,
she does have a lot of energy.
I think it's time. I might want to delay just a little bit more just to make sure that we give enough time for the man of the hour to show up. He's a busy guy. He's out there doing interviews all the time, talking to the press, talking to people, getting to know our communities.
I think she might be nervous because Andrew Yang isn't here yet.
Yeah, let's play the video. Roll the video, Mike. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, New Yorkers?
Hey, Comrade
As you know,
Manners.
the past 10 months have been scary and difficult and painful for many, many, many of us.
Is that John Leguizamo?
Many of our communities that I care about so passionately, the Latino community, the Black community, the Jewish community, the Asian community, the gay community, theater community, all of New York City is my community, and they're hurting badly right now. Even with the vaccine, it's going to take a hell of an effort to get New York City back to where we were.
Is that Luigi from the Super Mario Brothers movie?
I do know one guy running for mayor who's got the ideas and the enthusiasm to get us there, and that's Andrew Yang. Like a lot of my fellow parents, I got turned on to Andrew Yang during his presidential campaign from my kid, who really wants $1,000 a month, and I said, "Sure, son, let me get that for you." And then I started learning a lot about Andrew and what he believes in, and suddenly I was 100% Yang Gang. That's right, Yang Gang. Now, if anyone has the brain, the energy, and the empathy to bring New York City back, it's Andrew. He's got real plans to lift our communities out of poverty, to get people back to work, and to turn the lights back on
Luigi,
Broadway,
okay?
and revive the entertainment industry, which I care deeply about. And that's why I'm so excited and proud to introduce my friend, the next mayor of the greatest city in the world, Andrew Yang. And you may be asking, why are you excited about Mayor Andrew Yang?
I'm sorry, Pork Nickel.
Why is Andrew the candidate to save New York? What does New York need from its next mayor? I'll tell you. Because New York means everything to me. And Andrew Yang is a New Yorker.
Let me know. Am I audible? Hello, everyone. What's up, Yang Gang? Yeah. What a day. I saw 4/5 of New York City, sort of. Not really, because New York City is vast. But I went to 4 of the 5 boroughs. I'll make it Staten Island soon, I'm sure. So much fun. So glorious. Thank you, John Leguizamo. If you were to make a list of quintessential New Yorkers, I feel like John Leguizamo has to be very, very, very high on that list. Am I right? Like, John Leguizamo defines and embodies New York.
Wait, guys. Which emote do I get rid of if I need to bring back Peppo Hands? Okay? If I were to bring back Peppo Hands, which emote do I have to get rid of? Okay, guys? Do we have to get rid of Taft Bath? I need to know. Please. Please, tell me. Tell me which emote I should get rid of to bring back Peppo Hands. Oh yeah, John Leguizamo is like one of the more underrated actors. I love it whenever he shows up in anything. The weird peach butt? No, the peach butt's OG. He was in John Wick. Yeah, John Wick. Good movie.
In a way that very, very few others. I am so grateful to him and his family for the endorsement and support. It's immensely meaningful. And he's right. I do care deeply about the creative community and the Broadway community, in addition to the Latino community and all of the other ethnic communities around New York City. Because if you look at Broadway, yes, there are the 87,000 people that work directly for Broadway that are not working right now, and that's a lot. That's not just performers, that's ushers and parking attendants and like everything else. But there's something very, very unique about Broadway and its stature as like the temple to a particular type of performance or art. Like I remember the first time I went to a Broadway show, I was Phantom of the Opera when I was 13. Go ahead and like everyone yell out like what the heck your first Broadway show was, or type it into the box if you're here on Zoom. But mine was Phantom of the Opera.
Lion King.
Lion King, Rent. Oh, let's read some out. This will be fun. Someone saw Hamilton as their first show. That blows my mind because Hamilton was awesome. Incidentally, like Aladdin, Miss Saigon, Mamma Mia, Wicked, excellent. Do I sound like a Broadway nerd in that I've seen a lot of these shows? Like, I genuinely have seen a lot of these shows though. So John's 100% right that we need to do everything we can to reopen Broadway for reasons not just economic but human and cultural. So grateful to John, so grateful to everyone who's here watching tonight. I cannot wait for this mayoral campaign to just keep on gathering steam. Want to thank each and every one of you. I will say a couple of things just because, yeah, Phantom of the Opera, me too. I will say that in this race, so we all know that there are a lot of folks watching this from around the country, but this is a race where New Yorkers truly have magic powers. Remember the presidential, I used to talk about like the magic powers of Iowans, the magic powers of New Hampshire residents, which were real. but for this race, it's New York City residents who have incredible powers, like powers you're not even gonna believe when I tell you this, that if a New York City resident donates $50 to my campaign, the city of New York will match that 8 to 1. If you donate $50 to this campaign, the city gives us $400. If you donated
True,
$10,
Taft Bath has
If you donate
limited
250,
utility. We'll bring it back eventually,
$2,000.
okay?
Like it's awesome. I love it. I think most people who know me know that I love public campaign financing. So what we'd love for you to do, if you're watching this from outside New York, we love you. But you probably know a New Yorker because there are a lot of us, and you probably know someone. Just haunt a New Yorker or two and just be like, yo,
Hey,
remember that time
John
I did that thing? Do me a
Incognito.
favor, just donate $20 to like the Young Mayoral campaign, and then you can tell them that it's like the city will then give him $160. So this is like the most incredible alchemy that I've ever seen in electoral politics. So thank you, City of New York, for setting up such a robust campaign finance system. And we want to take advantage of the magic powers. So that's magic power number 1, 8 to 1 magic campaign matching. Number 2 is that, and this is one of the things that's funny, people are knocking me for not voting in mayoral elections. The proportion of New Yorkers who don't vote in mayoral elections is something like 87% or 90%. Like you're actually very, very, no offense, but you're kind of distinct if you do vote in mayoral elections. You're literally like 10%. And that's awesome. I mean, love it. So if we activate more New Yorkers to actually vote in the mayoral election, we can actually change those numbers very, very quickly because a lot more people voted for Joe Biden, for example. The turnout there was, I think, about 3 times higher than it was for the mayoral, maybe even higher than that, maybe 4 times higher. So if we get more people activated to vote in the mayoral, that's a huge win. It's great. The magic powers of New Yorkers in this one, just awesome. So please do get out the word to your friends in New York City. Let them know they can make magic happen like that. They owe you a favor. Maybe they owed you $20. Just be like, don't give it to me, give it to Yang, and then the city will give them 160. So as you can all tell, I'm already in the weeds of the mechanics of the race. That is the way my brain works, and that's the way my brain's working on the problems of New York City too. Because I see a problem in New York City and I think, maybe we can do something about that. But the only way we can actually be in position to do something at the biggest level here in New York City is to do the work, compete, get the word out, and win this race. Thank you so much for being here today. I think I'm gonna get some questions from the awesome Yang Gangers here in the Zoom in New York City. And I know people on YouTube and other channels, if you put in questions too, I have been told that we're gonna take some of those too because we love you just as much. Maybe not quite as much. We love these people a little bit more, but we love you too. Erica,
yes.
You light some people with some questions?
Absolutely. And thank you, yes, YouTubers and Twitterites and everyone else that's here. First question that you're going to get is from Monty. Monty, unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Monty, How are you? So many familiar faces here. Hey, Nell. Hey, Will. Hey, Tyler. Wow. Hey, Jasmine.
So I'm from the Bronx, and I taught elementary school for 20 years. Then I co-founded a charter school and served as its principal for 14 years. And also I started the Humanity Forward K-12 Facebook group. So people inside the meritocratic bubble don't understand that we are truly in an education apocalypse in New York City. In your book and in the 2019 campaign, you raised ideas that could revolutionize New York City public schools. And I want to ask if you could promise to make K-12 education one of your top 4 pillar issues this campaign.
Monty, first, thank you for everything you've done for so many kids. Wow, like what an educator's educator. Let's give it up for Monty. How many lives has he touched? Probably more than just about any of us. Yeah.
I counted 7,000.
7,000 lives. I mean, who can have that kind of impact? Not many people. Monty, of course, K through 12 is going to be one of my top priorities. If only just because I've got 2 children. I would be able to go home at night if I was like doing work and then Evelyn was like, hey, how about our child's public school? Should sort of be front and center. And it's the right thing to do on a human level. It's the right thing to do on a personal level. It's the right thing to do on an economic level. It's the right thing to do on an equity level. So 100%. We need to do more for folks like you, Monty, who are doing the work. And one of the things that I say to educators, like we need to set more educators up to be able to succeed. If you talk about an educational apocalypse in New York City, like that scares a lot of people. We have to make it so that schools are actually putting kids in position to succeed and teachers know that they're getting the support they need. Thank you for everything you've done, Monty. But yeah, it's gonna be a top priority for me for sure.
Can I follow up very quickly? Can you try to build a voting block of parents and teachers? Because people are sick and tired of the platitudes and false promises that other candidates are giving.
You know, Monty, I just ran into a supporter today on the trail who said they were part of like a Parents for Yang group. I wonder if they're here today. They might be. But they said the same thing. Is like we need to get a group of parents together to try to vote for the parents' interests. And there is like a real nagging concern that a lot of us have that there are various institutional layers that are making decisions that affect families in different ways, and then the families are like, oh, like looking around. So I would love to have a parents group activated so that families feel like their interests are actually leading in City Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Thank you so much. Just because we are limited on time, if we could just stick to the first
Oh
question.
no,
great.
am I too long-winded, Erica?
No, you're awesome, Andrew.
I'll stay here all
night.
night.
Andrew. All right, so we have a question from someone in the chat on YouTube, Sonic Fan. Can you talk about your MTA plans? It's been downhill for decades.
Yeah, it's been rough. You know, Sonic is one of my son's favorite video game characters. He called his character Sonic the Fighter. So, you know, he picked a good screen name. The MTA has been trending in a negative direction, and it's going to be tough to arrest like the decline, honestly. But I have some ideas, and I think there are big things that we can do. I do think that we need to be able to do them. It's very, very hard to have your main arteries of transportation that people are using to get to work and school every day and then not have control over it. I think that's going to be a big problem. But I've looked at the math. It turns out that the subway fares, as they currently are charged, represent a relatively small proportion of the cost of running the subways. For example, I think the fare box, which is what it's called, is somewhere in like the 35 to 40% level. So one of the things, in my opinion, you cannot do is you cannot raise fares to success. You know what I mean? Like that to me is a great way to start a negative spiral. You're much, much better off trying to make fares lower or more equitable in different ways. There's a fair fares program that needs to be expanded because a lot of families that could qualify for it aren't using it. So that gives you a sense of what I want to do with the subways. I will say that if you want to try and make big changes that will touch people's lives with our subways and buses, you have a lot more flexibility on buses than you do subways. Because if you think about it, it means common sense too. Like, you know, you can like do things with a bus. And you control the roads. So if you want to try and clear a bus lane on a road, you can do it. And the goal has to be to try and increase people's sense of the reliability of however they're getting around. So what happens is if someone has enough negative experiences, then they're like, hang it, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to invest in like segments that are really, really reliable. So if you can imagine, for example, a bus corridor with an electric bus going back and forth and it's very, very reliable, like that actually can change people's commuting habits. And that's the kind of thing we can do that does not break the bank. That would make a big difference in people's lives. I have an idea too that I hope New Yorkers like this. I was much more with it on the subway and the lines of the map than I ever was with the buses. like the buses. Hopefully this does not, you know, like make someone out there be like, oh, you know, I mean, like love the buses, but I was just much more cognizant of the subway lines.
Though.
And so one of the ideas I have is like, look, there might be certain bus lines that you make into virtual subways where you stick it on the subway map.
I'm mostly like still taking it in.
And then people start thinking of it as a subway, but it's like above ground subway, and it's just a very, very reliable electric bus that goes back and forth. I think that actually might make it more real for a lot of New Yorkers. Pre-pandemic,
I think some of his ideas are really half-baked.
The subway every day. Buses was like 2.2 million, something like order of magnitude. These numbers are about right. So one way to get more people on more buses is essentially to like lead them to the buses from the subway map.
Linda agrees with you. She just said in the chat, oh my gosh, why hasn't that happened yet? It makes so much sense to have a singular map. Okay, we have another question actually from Linda, if you would like to unmute.
Okay, hi Erica, hi Andrew.
Hey Linda.
Hey Linda.
Woo, so excited, I'm so happy you're running for mayor. And I was so happy also to hear you talk about Broadway and creatives at the beginning of this Zoom, because, you know, just amongst the gang, talking amongst ourselves, we kind of notice we do fall into buckets. There are a lot of creatives among us. Like just on the Zoom tonight, we've got musicians, like Broadway musicians, we've got artists, designers, actors, but we also have, you know, in our group, people like, you know, we have cabbies and baristas and people who work in hospitality. And sometimes we're all of those at the same time. And tech workers too. And we're like, well, what's the commonality?
What is the commonality? I've been waiting to hear this for months.
Here it is. We're all gig workers. We're all gig workers, and we all understand the fragility of, you know, you can have a good gig and things are great, but, you know, one thing happens and, you know, the show ends, or, you know, you lose a client, and then, you know, you got to figure it out. You might lose your insurance. So we're really vulnerable to the winds of what happens. And it's not just creatives that are gig workers. You know, there are, you know, people who work at an Amazon warehouse during holiday season. They're gig workers too. And you know, we also have a lot of young people and their students, because they're facing gig workers, being a gig worker as their future. So I guess our point is to you, our challenge to you as mayor of our city is, in addition to making New York the anti-poverty city, how can you make it the best city in the world for gig workers?
Thank you, Linda. Wow, there really was a common theme for so many different sorts of people in different industries.
Gig work is terrible.
To me,
God damn.
Gig work has replaced other forms of work for millions of Americans at this point. Some numbers I saw said the vast majority of new jobs created since 2005 have been gig work.
It just
but you know what has not
further
kept pace with that at all?
just
Pretty much everything
further
else. Like, our institutions
alienates
essentially
us.
pretend that people still have full-time jobs, and it is breaking us that people have their benefits associated with employment during this time, where you know
True.
like not having healthcare if you don't have a full-time job is the worst. So New York City, actually, I'm going to say New York City is probably like a real hub for gig workers and freelancers and creatives because of our nature. And so I'm going to make us the most gig worker friendly city in the country. I'm going to bring in, and I was actually
Somebody who is a gig
flabbergasted
worker.
that I'm going to have the power to do
hate
this
it.
as mayor. It's very, very exciting. I mean, you know, I need a little bit of help, but not that much help. We're going to set up a portable benefits program so that people who work in the gig economy actually get some of the benefits that full-time workers have, and some of the protections. And what we have to do is we have to introduce like a bit of a layer of accountability and a little bit of money at the front end. And I would say that the vast majority of consumers would be perfectly happy or wouldn't even notice, but we'd actually be able to have real protections and benefits for people in the gig economy. I want to do a few other things that are a little more like immediate.
Thank
and
you for the 700 unicorn penises.
Like having a freelancer hub in every
pork
borough.
nickel.
I think if you're a creative, especially in COVID, it's the worst.
I'm glad that
where
emote
even
makes
if you're
you
a creative,
happy.
you're working individually, you still like to be in a place with other creatives. That's just like a human impulse, you know what I mean? And so if you have a hub, it's very, very beneficial, and in my opinion, it pays for itself many times over. New York City. This question, Linda, actually goes to the heart of what makes New York City New York City. It's like, why is it that New York City has all these people who converge in different ways? It's because if you put a group of creative people on
the
the same floor in
unicorn
the same organization or whatnot,
bits
then they make each other
looks like
stronger
a
and better, and
penis
then
to
like
me.
incredible things result. It's not just that like the individual is really strong. It's like you get a group of individuals together. I'm actually going to go on a limb and say like this describes a Broadway show. You know what I mean? Like you have like individual, very, very strong people, but you also had like an excellent composer and an excellent musician.
A Marxist, absolutely not.
Like everything
I
has
just
to come
think
together.
that like
that actually is the essence of New
it's
York.
an awful
And so
symptom
we have
of
to try
worsening
and support that
capitalism.
in different ways. Portable benefits, freelancers hubs, and trying to protect workers. One thing,
Thank
for
you
example, and I've been a
for the
freelancer
10
myself
unicorn
the past, like, decade.
penises.
It's been a while. Although who knows? Maybe I'm a freelancer now because I don't have a steady job. But if you get stiffed, it is the most infuriating thing in the world. And there are some folks that feel like they can stiff freelancers at high level because like, yeah, what are you gonna do? It's like individuals, like, you know, did some fee for service, they like yank your chain. Some of you might have experienced that. So we're gonna do our best to try and protect you from that too, because that shit is just flat out wrong. And any freelancer that has had that happen to you, like I feel your pain. So we're gonna have protections for gig workers on that level. But New York City is gonna become the most gig worker friendly city in the country under my administration.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. This is a good time for me to take a little breather and say, hey, time to put in a donation. If you go to gang4ny.com/donation, help us get Andrew into office so he can implement some of the plans that you are hearing right now.
Again, this is only reinforcing my opinion of Andrew Yang, that like I like him as a human being. I think I would like get along well with him, but I like as like a politician, I don't like a lot of his policies.
Someone's throwing those links into the chat.
That was
Feel
me.
free
I just
to
typed
use
it
them.
in. I'm very helpful.
You are helpful,
I
Andrew. Yes, he makes everything so easy. Okay, I'm going to ask another question from the chat on the live stream from MLE7.
Thank you for the Jan Bezlos money.
They ask, how do you plan on addressing the racial inequality in New York that has heightened during the pandemic?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking how some of the inequities that were with us pre-pandemic.
Oh yeah, but I'm a huge dork, so like it works
during the pandemic and post-pandemic. I just came from a tour of a couple of neighborhoods, and I will say, in a way, these tours were incredibly uplifting. I'll speak to one, Brownsville, Brooklyn, which has many issues, but also had like incredible vibrance and energy in a different way. And like both there and in the Bronx, when I was distributing food with Congressman Torres, shout out Richie Torres, he's the best. You gotta check Richie Torres out, because that guy, nothing that guy can't do. Imagine being a member of Congress at age 32. I mean, that's bananas. But there was such heart and energy.
Thank you, Recall. It's the nicest thing my chat has ever said to me.
Representing Brownsville, and she said, "I don't feel safer any place than here because I know everybody, and like you know, everyone knows me." Like,
I'm glad you see it. I feel that.
Beauty, but the inequities were palpable. In Brownsville,
why is
there
it
were
sped up?
6
because it's 40 minutes long. So if we speed it up, we can fit in more content.
Blocks. And so it really was like something out of. And Latrice described it to me when I spoke to her before I went and visited her. But you look around and like, and if you turn any direction, there was like a housing development that kind of comprised the border of this area, and there were some real needs and some real deprivation. And
like, I'm not sure if how much interesting content is in here. You know,
to the tune of $1 billion a year.
So we're getting more bang for a buck.
I really think I can get it higher using some leverage. So check this out. Let's imagine New York City is like, hey, we're gonna abolish extreme poverty in the city. Would you like to help?
Somebody angle his camera down just like
dollars to like various New York City
slightly.
philanthropies. You know, I mean, like, will they chip in? Would you like to help champion a universal basic income that wants to make sure that this thing is as big as it can be? Like, I think that the $1 billion that the city plans on putting in could easily become $2 billion. Like, you know, if you leverage it right. I mean, that would be the goal. So if you can imagine $1.5 billion going into the hands of the poorest New Yorkers, who unfortunately like tend to be highly disproportionately comprised of people of color, then that's really, to me, the most powerful way you can begin to address the inequities that have gotten worse. And that's actually just the beginning of it, because if you look at it, the inequities are actually much bigger than just cash relief or home monies. I mean, they span generations and decades, but you have to start right now. I mean, you know, like
among other things.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Oh, and Will just threw something into the text, which I appreciate so much. He said 25% of the Asian American community in NYC live under the poverty line. It's true. Asian American poverty is often overlooked in New York City, and Asian communities get much less in the way of public resources than that number would suggest. So thank you, Will, for calling it out. That's very real. I'm going to be registering voters in Elmhurst, Queens tomorrow. So if you'd like to come join us, please do. Daniel.
By the way, after this, we're gonna watch a fireside chat with Diane Morales, who's another candidate for mayor.
Kim, star of Lost in Hawaii 5-0 and a bunch of other things, is going to be joining us. So he's a great guy. So really excited about that. But yeah, thank you, Will, for pointing it out. You're 100% right.
So we have a question from Jasmine.
Hello, Andrew. My name is Jasmine. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I was one of your delegates from the Bronx. I was really excited to do that for you. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Jasmine.
My question is, for the 300,000 NYCHA residents living in New York City, I noticed on your website that you were talking about borough bucks. Can you please explain what that is and how will that help NYCHA residents? And is this included with the guaranteed basic income?
Thank you. What phenomenal questions. So borough bucks is something that I think that New York City is uniquely situated to be able to make use of. If we were a country, we'd be the 11th biggest economy in the world. So I'm going to point out just a couple of examples of things that are going on that have inspired me where borough bucks are concerned. Number one is that Ithaca, New York, which is a much smaller economy than New York City, has this like local cash program, Ithacash, that gets used in various small businesses, and it circulates through their business community. Closer to home in New York, there are yeshiva schools. This I thought was genius as a parent, where they ask every parent in the school to buy, let's call it $1,000 worth of vouchers for local businesses. And then they have to spend it at the local businesses, and the local businesses then turn it around and give it to the yeshiva school, but they have like a 20% discount. So like every parent is essentially donating a certain amount of money to the school through spending at the small businesses. I don't know if people understood where I was going with that. So borough bucks, the plan is to create a payment system where people can pay each other within borough or the boroughs, and have that money circulate through. So imagine if you were a NYCHA resident, and you're spending a certain amount of money on various things, then we give you these borough bucks that are good at, let's call it locally owned or women owned or minority owned small businesses. Then you spend it, then that small business then can turn it around and spend it with another small business there. And we can hopefully create a whole ecosystem of value in that community.
Wait, would this not make it more difficult to leave the borough, though? Because then you can't, leave.
That can be much, much more vast than the amount of money that we're actually laying out at any given moment in time. And so a couple of examples I'm going to use from our own experience. Let's say you have 30,000 frequent flyer miles. How much is that costing the airline? No one knows. Sort of a trick question. But the point is that you could actually put things into people's hands that they can then hold as a currency. And then you end up being able to stimulate transactions in a way that actually will be a multiple of the amount of cash you have in reserve. So for the...
I know, I see what his plan is. I just am not convinced that this would work. This seems like an expansion of something like company Scrit, only applied to a geographical location as opposed to a company town. I'm not sure how I feel about this.
But airlines, they probably have a certain amount of value that they have in reserve for people to come redeem the frequent flyer miles at any moment in time. But it's much, much smaller than the actual miles in circulation. This must have been the most confusing explanation. I will do better next time, Jasmine. But the goal is to put money into people's hands, and I think that there are different ways that you can actually get buying power into their hands, other than just putting U.S. dollars in their hands. Because at this point,
his plan is to create a alternative money to circulate in localities. But if people are getting paid in this currency, I feel like that could be a huge problem. Because I don't know. I feel like that could literally shackle people down into one geographical location because they only have this type of like alternate currency.
In our lives, we all have essentially 5 or 6 currencies that we're using at any moment in time. We have the cash in our wallet.
Yeah.
Then we have our credit
Yeah, I
cards.
peel that.
And then Apple Pay, which is linked to the credit card. And then you have maybe points like from American Express or something. Then you have like the deli punch card you're never going to use because the deli closed. Then you have some money on your Venmo. You know, it's like you have money in like different places. And there's a real opportunity, given how big New York City is, that we can actually create ways to exchange value for people that make them functionally richer in ways that 1 + 1 = 3 or 4.
I would need a much
Okay,
more detailed version of this plan. That did not deserve applause. We need a much more detailed version of this plan, other than like, we're gonna create Bitcoin but for boroughs.
Thank you, Jasmine. Awesome.
Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you for being a delegate. That's incredible.
You're welcome.
Have you
So
met Jasmine? I feel like I've met a lot of these other characters.
I've met you at a fundraiser. I believe it was somewhere in New York. We met at a fundraiser with Siobhan and Newsom.
Oh, great. Well, we'll see each other again on this campaign for sure, I'm sure. Isn't it
Right.
fun? Like, we're all in the same place.
Yeah. I've heard so many people say that. It's so true. I have another question for you, Andrew. It's from Glowing Ember. Asks, how do you plan on approaching the homelessness problem in our city?
Homelessness is a growing crisis, and I think there are things we can do to help. And one of the ways we can help is born of the fact that right now New York City is dealing with this problem very, very expensively and inefficiently. So we have a massive shortage of affordable housing and supportive housing. And the tough reality of getting more supply has been that everyone is for affordable housing or supportive housing in the abstract, but then when you say, hey, we're gonna build your neighborhood, then they don't like it. You know, like that's what's been going on for a long time. So now that we're in crisis mode, to me, we have to make use of the underutilized properties in New York that are lying vacant in many cases. And a lot of those are hotels. You know, you can imagine a lot of these hotels that, like, can you imagine these hotels right now are mostly empty. And a lot of folks right now are trying to figure out what to do with that hotel. To me, the move is to say to the hotel owner, look, we'll take it off your hands, we'll assume the liabilities, and then we can turn it into affordable housing very quickly. The thing that's happening right now is we're going to the hotel and the city's paying up to $200 a night to house someone that because we don't have a homeless shelter for that person. Like, I don't think anyone thinks that's a good idea, because if you do the math on that, like, that adds up really quick. That's like $50,000 a year, essentially, to house a homeless person. I mean, like, think about how wild that is. You could just like give the person $50,000 and then they like walk out and, you know, I mean, you know, a lot of them need more than just, you know, like that place to stay. But you understand what I'm saying. It's like we're spending a lot of money. So that creates opportunities, because if you channel some of those resources towards struggling hotels, then you can actually activate beds very, very quickly.
See, this actually isn't a terrible idea, because the entire premise is just like, just buy the building and then put them in there for free until they get their life sorted out, and then you can put like social services within the building that they can access very easily. That's actually a decent solution, but I don't think that's where he's headed with this.
And that's forever. Like, you can actually build affordable housing that's going to be with us for years and decades. But we should be doing this right now, because a lot of these hotel owners are trying to figure it out. It's not doing anyone any good lying dormant. We have a homelessness crisis on the other side and a shortage of shelter space. The shelters are getting overrun. And so we should be doing this right now. Like, I don't understand why we're not doing this right now.
So thank you, Andrew.
Maybe
just
it is
another
where he's
public
going with that.
announcement. Don't forget to donate. Thank you so much for all that you have given so far. It's pretty exciting how well our campaign is doing on the first day. 2 million views on our video. Pretty exciting, Andrew. I have one more question that needs to be asked of you, and I think we'll wrap it up after that. Nell, do you want to ask your question that you've been burning
Hey,
to
Nell,
ask?
how are you?
No, not no. Andrew, how you doing? Andrew, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Wow, what a background. Nell's a creative guy. You look, I mean, that looks freaking very real. It's making me pine after the Mets opening day.
Yeah, well, I have a very tough question for you, Andrew. First of all, I want to tell you how happy I am that you are a Mets fan. And but this is the really tough question. Who's your favorite New York Met?
Like, of all time or right now?
I mean, well, you know, I think it's an icebreaker question. You know, just kind of who's your favorite New York Met of all time? Of all time is fine.
Of all time, I just have emblazoned in my mind. This is gonna date me. I'm sorry. Like, I know I might get others, but I just remember Darryl Strawberry standing there at the plate, and it just seemed like he was gonna hit it out of the park every time. He was like there, he's so imposing. Yeah, like the bat, the waggle, and whatnot, the lefty swing. As a kid, I just thought he was a superhero. So Darryl Strawberry jumps out. In terms of current Mets, you know, I have to say Jacob deGrom. I mean, that guy just like can't seem to do anything but win.
This is why I have it sped up.
Those are the folks that come to mind. But there are a lot of the Mets that are like these vintage years, and we had so many generations of good Mets. I really loved the John Olerud, Ray Ordonez, Robin Ventura like era Mets. Like, that was a really good fun team.
Yeah,
You know,
awesome.
Mike Piazza, clearly. I mean,
Oh,
Mike
yeah.
had some great moments.
For sure. All right, thank you, Andrew. That's
Thank you, man. You look great. You really
Thank
look.
you.
That's an uplifting, freaking backdrop, and
Thank you.
and cap and everything else.
He's definitely made a lot of graphics for the Yang Gang, for sure.
Oh,
I don't know
for
if you
sure.
happened to catch his Spider-Man graphic. I don't know.
I think
Well,
I did. It was really well done.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm so glad. Andrew, do you have any last words before we close out?
First, thank you all so much. It has been a blast campaigning, even just for this brief period. And if the amount of love I got on the streets of New York is any sign, we're gonna do great. Anywhere,
Real.
and people are just like, "Yang, Yang, Andrew Yang, where's my money?" Like whatever the thing is. But it's really, really positive. There's a lot of love. You know, I looked at my team and was like, "Hey, I have a feeling it might be good to have a mayoral candidate that people are really happy to see."
For sure.
I have a feeling that might help us. I think this race is going to be tremendous, but we need people to roll up our sleeves and do the work. So that's volunteer, it's donate. If you're not in New York, if you're in New York City, please do donate right now. Like if you're watching this in New York.
All right, we're done. We're done with this. That wasn't nearly as interesting as I was hoping it was going to be, but it did certainly solidify my opinion on Andrew Yang. All right, let's check out this Diane Morales, because I haven't seen her in action yet. So let's look into it. This is from back in August, I think. Yeah, August 20th.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Meet the 2021 Candidates for New York City Mayor. My name is Kathleen Culhane, and I'm president of Non-Traditional Employment for Women and the board chair of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition. This morning, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Diane Morales for the second of our scheduled conversations.
Good
with
night,
the publicly announced
Archangel.
Candidates. Thank you to the members and partners that have joined us from nearly 100 organizations to hear from the candidate. The New York City Employment Training Coalition supports the workforce development community to ensure that every New Yorker has access to the skills, training, and education needed to thrive in the local economy, that every business is able to maintain a highly skilled workforce. NYC ETC's membership is comprised of nearly 180 workforce providers, educational institutions.
Ms. Morales has dedicated her life's work to building partnerships across the public and private sectors to deliver high-quality services to struggling families. Most recently, she served as the CEO of Phipps Neighborhoods, an anti-poverty organization in the South Bronx. And prior to that, was the executive director of The Door, a youth development organization in Lower Manhattan. Prior to that, she served as the chief of operations and innovation from 2002 to 2004 at the New York City Department of Education's Office of Youth Development, as a director of the Teaching Commission and a founding board member of Jumpstart. In July 2019, she filed paperwork to run for mayor of New York City in the 2021 mayoral election. Diane, welcome. It's always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having me, Joey. It's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see you, and I'm happy to be back with this community.
Great to have you. So let's start out with just giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the community. Tell us a little bit about yourself, including your work here in New York City in the human services sector.
Sure.
SJW 9000, thank you very much for the raid. I appreciate it, friend. And welcome, raiders. My name is Jack. I'm a socialist. Hello. And we're going over just a talk and interview with Diane Morales, who is running for mayor of New York City. And she seems to be one of the more promising candidates. So we're learning more about her after watching the shit show that was Andrew Yang's town hall.
Sure. So my name is Diane Morales. I'm the first Black Boy candidate for New York City mayor. I'm also, as Joey referenced, I'm a first-generation college graduate. I was born and raised in Bed-Stuy. I raised my children as a single mom in the same community. That's where I'm speaking to you all from this morning. I am an educator. I've dedicated my entire career to helping Black and brown folks in communities fight to overcome the injustices and inequities that are baked into our public policies and the institutions that are charged with carrying them out. Part of that journey for me has always included creating innovative and alternative solutions to addressing the dysfunctional systems and to create pathways to opportunity for those folks in those communities. I've been a founder of Jumpstart, as Joey mentioned. It's a national early childhood organization that just...
Oh, nothing bad happened during Andrew Yang's town hall. He just had some very strange ideas that I'm not immediately sold on and kind of half thought out plans. One of them involved borough bucks, which seemed like basically company script, but for like individual geographical locations within New York City.
Celebrated its 26-year anniversary. I've been the executive director of several nonprofit organizations, significantly increasing budgets, impact, and recognition both in the city and internationally for quality programming. I've created programs that have been replicated citywide. For those of you who run DYCD, Compass, or used to run those programs, the education specialist model was something that I created. I've created housing for young people, including the LGBT population, transitioning out of homelessness or foster care. And I've established cross-sector partnerships with employers and higher education that have provided access to career pathways in healthcare that exceeded the national retention rates in that field. And I think that the most consistent sort of thread in my work throughout my career has been actually the recognition of and the implementation of partnerships to be successful, the recognition that no one entity or individual can actually create the kind of change that we need in our communities.
Thanks, Diane. As I mentioned earlier, you filed to run for mayor back in July 2019.
I did.
At the time, why did you decide to run for mayor?
So, as a lifelong New Yorker, I really can't point to a time when I felt like our city government belonged to us. I think as a first generation Boricua, I'm aware that the notion of the American dream really isn't possible when it relies on systems that weren't built for all of us and that don't work for all of us. And so, a year ago, I decided it was time for me to step into these unknown waters and declare my candidacy, because I feel like we need one of us on the inside if we're really going to find a way to address the root causes of inequity and injustice. I think it's important for folks to be represented who have historically struggled to afford the rent, who can't find jobs that provide livable wages, who can't access quality health care, and who've always been over-policed. I think it's going to take one of us to bring change for us. And I don't think that people who haven't done this work really truly understand that. I think there's a difference between the sort of intellectual or the theoretical and the practical. I also think that my personal experience as a first-generation college graduate, a single mother who's been paid less than my male counterparts, a parent of children with learning differences who struggle through the public school system, a survivor, and a Black Latina, combined with my professional experiences as an executive that led large-scale change in organizations, that managed budgets, that worked across sectors, and navigated a variety of stakeholders to create workarounds to the system. I think all of these skills and experiences are really the critical difference that can help to bring about the transformative change that we really need.
Thank you. So since obviously the time of your initial announcement and the consideration for running for mayor, the world and the city has changed dramatically, and in ways that we obviously could not have foreseen previously. Through May, over 1.25 million New Yorkers face unemployment and steep economic insecurity. Nearly 900,000 private sector and government jobs have been lost, and 330,000 independent contractors filed for pandemic unemployment assistance. The city's unemployment rate now stands at over 20%, with marginalized communities facing the highest rates of displacement. Have your priorities as a result of COVID, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement, changed at all?
I wouldn't say that my priorities have changed. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely strengthened and reinforced my resolve. But I don't think any of this is really an accident. What I mean by that is that in many ways, the COVID-19 pandemic just revealed the pandemic of racism in ways that are impossible to ignore. The COVID pandemic has not been the great equalizer that some people were talking about it being at the beginning when all of this hit. It's just instead it's put our disparities in stark relief, right? And as I said before, from day one, my campaign has been focused on root causes. So what the pandemic has done is to make the case for the urgency around our needs to address those deep-seated, underlying, and longstanding structural patterns that led to my being in this race to begin with. It's really just kind of highlighted the pre-existing conditions that have been reflected in the disparities in terms of access to affordable housing or employment for economic stability or quality education or healthcare. It's just laid bare the cracks in the foundation. But I think that there's plenty of us who love our city and its people, and we're stepping up and stepping in to lead what I'm hoping will be the radical reimagining of who we are and how we operate.
Thank you. So as you know, recently we released a report called Recovery for All. It was a vision and set of recommendations from over 80 leaders in the private and human services sector that center on small business and workforce development for displaced workers and marginalized communities. It was a part of a group that we established called the New York Workforce Recovery Strategy Group that included all of those leaders across different sectors and really took a non-siloed approach to making sure that the economic recovery was one that was equitable. Are there any recommendations that stood out to you or that align with your vision for post-COVID recovery?
Sure. I mean, I think that honestly, what I was most struck by is the fact that the recommendations aren't remarkably different from what the sector has been asking our leadership and government to do for a really long time, right? Whether it's, they should draw on and rely on the expertise of our teams and our communities. They should trust that we know how to do this work and give us flexibility contractually. They should, leverage their position, government, the city, to integrate systems and really create partnerships, whether that's with unions or employers or higher education. They should prioritize communities that need the most relief, and really reduce kind of the bureaucracy around operating and creating small businesses or providing wage subsidies. What feels different to me, and what I think I get most excited about, is the idea that you guys stated very clearly about going back to normal is not good enough. To me, that aligns with my platform, which pushes the need for a radical reimagining of all of our systems. The idea that we need to throw out the old playbooks and business as usual and create just a whole new paradigm for moving forward that really centers those that have been the most adversely impacted. What I'd like to see is the creation of deep, meaningful partnerships that actually bring the sector to the table in real ways, not just these sort of symbolic platitudes or superficial, gestures or these task forces that meet once every 6 months. We know the old ways didn't work. So the path forward has to be one where we're really tapping into the skills and the expertise of the sector to foster innovation and really develop all sorts of pilots and test new ideas. I'd like to see us explore what it might look like to truly integrate workforce development into education from, a cradle to college and career pipeline, right? What would it look like for us to make significant strides towards building an inclusive solidarity economy that moves towards shifting power to workers, right? That increases the focus on worker-owned cooperatives. There are several examples in the city that I think we could be learning from. Those are the things I'd like to sort of, I feel like it's tabula rasa. You know, we can wipe the slate clean and start over because we know what's not been working. And there is an opportunity here. There's a window here for us to push to actually just reinvent ourselves in a whole different kind of way that empowers workers and empowers communities and empowers community-based organizations in ways that are historically unprecedented.
This lady is speaking my language here.
Thank you. And I want to go a little bit more into some of those pieces with my next question. Because obviously, given your experience, you're uniquely connected to the human services sector, workforce, education sector, much unlike previous candidates. And obviously, your background and connection to community, more than just having been a leader, but you're representing that community as well. What steps would you take to grow the city's workforce system, to make sure that it's more data informed, to ensure that the services are easy to access for people that come from organizations that you've served in the past, like FIPS and the Door, and finally, is more responsive to the labor market needs as well as the needs of all New Yorkers?
Right. So I have to say, I catch myself. I hear myself saying us and we, and you know, I'm still. I haven't quite.
The main problem I'm seeing with her is that she's very much. She's using a language of like the language that I hear a lot from the people I work with in nonprofits, right? Like, and that sort of vernacular comes across as very technocratic. So I agree with you as Marxist. Like, it's very something I'm a little sketch on. But I think that if she adopted different rhetoric and a different way of presenting her ideas, what she was talking about would have appealed to me a lot more. So I think the idea underlining a lot of what she's saying is pretty good. But yeah. As Marxist, I agree. I agree that was a lot of nonsense. But when co-op's good. And looking at the co-ops that work within New York City and expanding those, I'm in favor of that. Okay.
Transitioned to that other side, and you know, part of what's different is I don't fully expect to ever do that, no matter what. So I catch myself using that language of us, and I hope that it is what it is. You know, I think data is important, right? But as the former head of a community organization, I also know there's a lot more to measuring the impact of our work than just the numbers. And I know that, you know, there are many instances where we need time, and that even in doing our best work, it sometimes takes more than one shot to get our people to move forward. So I think I would say that it's important for there to be a more nuanced approach than the usual sort of one-size-fits-all strategy that the city has used historically to either inform practices or to measure impact. And I think that the sector has a critical role to play in helping to determine
what the appropriate
data is, and what we think,
you know,
what we have to recognize is that things are changing right now. Everything is changing. And so what we measure and report and how we do that might also need to change as we move forward. You know, I'll also go back to the notion of you know, an inclusive solidarity economy that centers workers and increases community ownership. I think that will go a long way towards making services more accessible to people and more available in communities. And that, you know, we need to just move forward, think about how we move forward towards strengthening communities by really building them up in a much more collective, interdependent way that increases community level investment and ownership in self-determination and the economy.
Thank you. Yeah, that feeds nicely into the next question, because you mentioned inclusivity. You talked about, you know, the mention in our report around going back to normal isn't good enough. And I think that, you know, that's certainly something that the Employment Training Coalition is beyond the report, is aligned with what you just shared. Tell us more about your plans in order to make the city more inclusive. And when considering that, consider a few questions. What is the role of workforce development specifically in that conversation? And what are some of the biggest challenges facing New York workers and job seekers today and in the coming decade? So policies, programs that we need to enact to address them.
Yep. Well, you know, in terms of making the city more inclusive, we could certainly start by putting a woman of color in charge. I think that would go a long, long way towards making the city more inclusive. I think, you know, so I think about this question in two sort of prongs, if you will, the short term and the long term. I think in the short term, we really need to provide the economic relief that people need to survive, as the report touches on, right? My platform actually includes a basic income guarantee that I think should be implemented across the city, particularly, you know, during these times. I think the earned income tax credit and the child care credits that are included in the report are also really good proposals for the immediate future. In the longer term, I would look to create more integrated, substantive partnerships with the workforce development community and other citywide stakeholders, the Department of Education, CUNY, DYCD, the Partnership for New York City, all of the players that really have a stake in the successful reimagining of the city. The current, you know, the historic sort of silos of operation and the symbolic representation that we've had at the table in terms of determining solutions to problems that have plagued us, you know, have really hampered our ability to maximize impact. And so we have to sort of, again, fundamentally reimagine how we approach this moving forward.
This kind of rhetoric is just making my eyes glaze over.
There's no one person or institution that's going to do this, and so it's going to, you know, really take us finding new ways to work together, really working together, bought into the same vision
some of
to
this
move towards the real justice and equity for our communities.
Corporate nonsense.
Thanks. Diane, so you're the new mayor of the city. Tell us what your priorities look like for the first 100 days.
Sure. So I've been talking a lot over the last couple of months about the budget. The budget being a reflection of values and priorities. And so I would really look towards creating a budget that puts people first. For me, that would start with divesting and reinvesting is sort of the language that I've been using. I think I think our police budget is bloated, well. And there are a lot of really critical needs that are being underfunded that are really much more closely related to public safety. And so I think that would be one of the critical moves that attached with sort of, we're kind of free falling right now. And I think reprioritizing our budgeting would enable us to sort of put the floor on that and then begin to build back up. I think the other thing I would really be interested in tackling because it's such a behemoth is beginning to desegregate our schools and engage in that process. Thank you, Diane.
One last question before we start to open it up for.
That wasn't like that was a bad answer. Yeah, this is not who I got from her platform positions. L421, where this is a interview with Diane Morales, who is running for mayor of New York City. I'm not super impressed, and I'm also extremely bored, so I'm not going to watch the rest of this. Let's see if we have Carlos Menchaca. Carlos Menchaca. All right, let's see here. Mayor. And let's see. Town. Oh, mayoral interview. Here we go. He was the other one who stood out, but let's see how he does.
Yeah, so good to see you, and thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks so much for your time. Just to start off, could you give a little bit of an introduction to your candidacy for mayor, and tell people why you're running and what you would bring to the job that your fellow candidates for the mayor aren't bringing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a city council member, and I represent a district in Southwest Brooklyn, District 38, which includes Sunset Park and Red Hook. So if you know our district, that's where we've been doing a lot of good work in the last 7 years, and we are going through some incredible and difficult times right now as a city that really, I think, elevated some issues that we have been working on in the district that are really felt citywide: development, policing, reimagining policing, and just how to construct budgets. And all these things are really what's motivating me in really stepping in and bringing issues and talking about issues in a way that none of the candidates have done and won't do. And there's a difference between talking about it, and I call it progressive speak, and actually being able to implement it with courage. And I feel like in my time in the city council, I've really confronted not just the mayor, but also my colleagues in figuring out how to do things differently. And so we had this big rezoning situation that happened. That was a 7-year kind of in the making situation where Industry City, a big rezoning, we defeated because the community came together and really offered a new way, a new vision about how our relationship with government and developers just wasn't working. So I'm here to challenge the status quo. I'm here to bring new ideas and really with the courage to transform government in the way that we need it.
Yeah, well, I think that's absolutely exactly what we need. We need people who are, courageous enough to challenge the status quo, because this not only is the status quo not working, it's hurting so many people, right? And one of the best places to challenge the status quo, and like you framed it, I think so perfectly, reimagining how we police, and you followed it up by talking about the budget. And I think it's so important that we do that immediately, specifically in your instance, as the mayor has so much pull in deciding how the New York City budget is going to be allocated. And under Mayor Bill de Blasio, just like every other mayor, it's been wildly misallocated in the view of many progressives such as myself and Gavin. I'm wondering what kind of steps that you would take to make the rein in the budget of the NYPD, completely full stop. I think the people of New York City have been overwhelmingly clear, taking to the streets, demanding a defunding of their police department. And I think a great place to start this conversation would be, how do you think we can go about that if you're elected mayor?
So in a lot of ways, I've been thinking about this since last summer, when the marches that were happening across the city were all really energized around this concept of budget justice and defunding the NYPD. And I think the city council in so many ways failed to take that energy and make it what it should be, a people's house, a place for the people's voice to make policy. And we failed. I voted no on the budget. And this was after, I think, a lot of negotiations. We were really close, I have to say, to building our own budget. The city council has the power to pass its own budget, separate and apart from the mayor. In this system right now, the mayor has a lot of power to propose a budget that we react to, and then we go into negotiations. In the middle of these negotiations, the budget was slammed with a decrease of $10 billion. Now that's the kind of World Economic depression that we're in right now. And it didn't give us enough time, I think, to organize. I want to change that. This next year, I want to build something called the People's Budget. Is exactly what I just kind of framed it as, the power of the council to actually build our own budget, but not 6 weeks into 6 weeks right before the budget vote, 6 months. And so really next month, what I want to start doing is gathering council candidates and gathering people that are part of the movement to start building our own budget that we get to push through the city council. That's, I think, how we start the conversation in a different way. We started at the council side. That will allow us to actually defund the NYPD and then show to people where we want to put it. Education, healthcare, housing. There's so many places I think that we can actually benefit from a decrease of up to $3 billion. But people have to see it. I think that's the one thing that I think is missing here, to actually see a new budget. And then what we can do is really confront these issues that not an issue, but the idea that we can actually start creating non-police solutions to public safety. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to these big foundational solutions to, these problems that we're talking about addressing, such as income inequality, another bold solution that's been proposed that I heard you briefly mention on another show you were on is the concept of universal basic income, which has been widely popularized as of late. And I'm personally hoping that the next mayor of New York City is able to kind of lead the way on this front, and would try to get a UBI implemented for the citizens of New York City. I think it would certainly be a game changer and could be a nation-leading policy. Would you attempt to implement something like a guaranteed income for the citizens of New York City? And how would that work as mayor? Like, how would you be able to get something like that accomplished?
Good night, Ashley.
I'm super excited about universal basic income, and it's something that a few of us in the council have gotten excited about, talked about. We are trying to figure out how to make that work, and there are a lot of mechanisms that we've actually created that will mimic this kind of
sure
support
when the election
for
is,
people.
actually.
And there's 2 or 3 things that I want to make sure are kind of set in this program. One is that every New Yorker should have access to this program, and I'm talking about immigrants, undocumented immigrants. And so that becomes a little bit we
based as hell. He wants this to go to undocumented immigrants as well. That'd be amazing.
have to work a little bit harder when that happens. We can do that with city tax money, and we've done it in other programs like the identification card, ID NYC. I don't know if either of you have it in your wallet, but you also
we're both based out of Kansas City, actually, so we're not New Yorkers.
Oh, that's right. Okay, well, ID NYC is this incredible program for
New
Yorkers that New Yorkers can
doing
take
a lot
on,
better.
and anybody, no matter your immigration status, can have a government issued ID. And that's good for so many things like police. Many times you get caught up in the criminal justice system. And so we created every program like this is for everybody. Universal basic income has to be the next one. And then the other thing that we did recently was a program called Fair Fares. And I don't know if you've heard about that. In New York, we wanted to ensure that people have
public transportation,
half price Metro cards.
Yeah.
And that's something that we created and designed for everyone, no matter what.
I like this because he's actually been doing stuff in New York City, as opposed that tangibly improves people's lives, as opposed to like Andrew Yang, who hasn't really done anything in New York City as far as I am aware of. Yeah. How important do you think the mayor of New York City is in a national sense? I think it's really fucking important because, like, again, New York City by itself is like one of the largest economies on the planet. And also, usually the mayor of New York City gets set up pretty well for a presidential run. So we want somebody who's progressive to win the mayorship in New York City, not just because it improves the lives of people in New York City, which it does, but also because it has potential future political ramifications.
Immigration status you had, and so this is all kind of in the making towards it. So that's how we're gonna do it. And as mayor, what I want to do, and even before mayor, this is why building our own budget is going to be important, because what we want to do is actually do it now. I don't want to wait till 2022. I want to use the power that I have in the council to implement ideas, bringing a grassroots effort to really push this current council to do the right thing. And I want to be able to display my mayoral vision now, and I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen.
Yeah, well, it's certainly needed. And I think you touched on a really important point that I wanted to get into, was when you talked about when we provide relief at scale, especially in a place like New York City, which does have such a diverse population, you need to be considering solutions that are, taking into mind people of all, immigration statuses, of all, housing situations. And when we're looking at the, particularly the housing situation in New York City, I'm sure these numbers have gotten worse, but at one point it was something like 30% of renters were unable to, we're months behind on rent, facing massive eviction. As soon as any kind of government prevention and evictions are allowed to begin again, there's going to be just a horrifying and devastating kind of houselessness crisis unfolding in New York City, the likes of which we haven't seen since the Great Depression. I'm wondering what kind of solutions that you're thinking of, both as a city council person now and as a future mayor. How do we work to resolve that for all people of New York?
Yeah, this is one of those categories that has a lot of ideas. I want to share with you some of the things that are exciting and really out of the box. One is I want to start thinking about municipalizing apartments. What does that mean? There are thousands of apartments right now in the city of New York that are empty. And they're empty for a lot of different reasons. I want to be able to figure out how the city can either create a program or to really kind of force a situation where they would have to, whomever is holding it, maybe an international company or whatever, to offer it into a city program that...
Guys, These policies are making me horny. They're so good. I'm so like, honestly, this is way more exciting than anything we've covered so far tonight.
Would allow for a family to move in.
Yeah, if you look at like Manhattan numbers on the who's registered to vote at the lofts and skylines that make up the the $100 million lofts or whatever, it's nobody.
Exactly. And that's across, and that now includes so much housing that was built in the last 7 to 10 years with Bloomberg and now de Blasio, where these units are just waiting for this economy, this kind of market response that isn't working. And so that's one that I want to tackle. I'm going to need a lot of legal support to really build that out, but I think we can get somewhere. And even if it's a percentage, we can really show the power of that to solve the crisis that we're seeing. Two is really change the way that we think about building affordable housing. There's so much housing that's getting built that's just market driven with a little bit of requirement for affordable housing, but it's so small. I want to build 100% affordable forever. And those are 2 projects in my district in Sunset Park that are models, and really looking to our nonprofit developers that can actually build 100% affordable with a lot of tax incentive and capital investment. But that's what the cities need to do right now. And what we're not utilizing right now is our borrowing power. The city of New York is at its best rating right now to borrow money, to construct. And now we're talking about like affordable housing, but we can also be talking about the Green New Deal municipal version. What can we do? And not even wait for the federal government to take this on, and really show that the federal government can come in after. We don't need them to lead. We can actually do it. We have so much financial power to actually make something happen that will generate jobs and jumpstart our economy. And so anyway, I have a lot of other economy conversations.
Yeah, well, let's stay on that. Could you talk about the Green New Deal being implemented at a municipal level? I just imagine that with Joe Biden at the wheel, we're not going to get anything that's up to par for what we need anyway. So obviously it would be valuable to get started at a local level, especially in a city like New York City, which, like you mentioned, has tremendous economic power, but also just has the media is going to have eyeballs on it, like we mentioned with UBI. If something gets started in New York City, especially something successful, the nation's going to be forced to replicate that.
In other cities that might not have the kind of robust nature, but and also won't be able to experiment the way we can. This is a city I think that needs to experiment with all these ideas that have yet to make it into
it's sped
fruition.
up. Yep.
UBI, and I think there's a lot of ways you can sketch kind of create that. But with the economy, what I see as a backbone to the economy right now is the immigrant economy. The backbone of New York City's economy is an immigrant economy. We have a few pieces of legislation that are waiting to get passed to support street vending in a bigger way.
Like
there are immigrants right now that are permitted, that are not permitted. They are essentially illegal and outside the system that are vending right now. And when we're thinking about COVID, where that's the safest thing you can do is to sell outside. The city has yet to release thousands of new permits. That's tax revenue we can be bringing into the city. That's an example of this essential work that is happening in cities where immigrants are putting themselves out in front, getting sick, dying at large numbers, having access to healthcare, where we can actually enfranchise them into the system. Street vendors, worker cooperatives. Worker cooperatives are a beautiful way for immigrants to come in without having status, because they can use their EIN number to be part of the business and be a business owner. And so and worker cooperatives are just better, I think, at really confronting the capitalist mentality of wealth generation for one person, and instead everybody makes it. And
guys, I'm cumin over here. Okay, I'm cumin for this man's policies.
And so those are the kind of things that I want to really offer for New Yorkers, especially when over 40% of the population are non-English speakers at home and are working right now on the front lines. Construction is a big place for immigrants that are working right now outside of the unions. And because I imagine that with this massive capital program that I'm talking about, the Green New Deal, where we can actually fund the transition into better infrastructure across the city, we're gonna need a lot more workers, and that's where we can really bring in the immigrant community as well. And then you start solving housing issues because people have a job and people can pay for it, and they're good wages. That's part of the Green New Deal, and all of that is without even asking the federal government to come in. We can really do that as a city of New York.
Well, it seems like New York City has had some successes for progressive candidates lately. Obviously, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jamal Bowman have gone to Washington, D.C. from New York City, and there's also been a handful of socialists elected to the state legislature, including several of which we've had on this podcast, had really good conversations with them. And I was just wondering, are you planning on capitalizing the same kind of progressive groundswell of support and activism behind your candidacy? And are you hoping to earn the endorsements of groups like the New York City DSA or the Working Families Party, which could help propel you to success like they have other candidates?
So yes, and in some ways, I don't want to win this without them. I think that this race has to really show the coalition that needs to come together, that includes the Working Families Party. I don't know if the DSA is going to endorse in the mayoral. I think they're really focused on a legislative agenda, and I think this is a kind of national trend for the DSA. But it doesn't mean that we can't share ideas. And so I want to really build with them, and we're doing that right now around zoning. They saw the work that we did around Industry City, this massive development on the waterfront that was bringing luxury retail and hotels that were out of context to this working waterfront, and we defeated it. And I think that this is power that we're kind of lending. And so you're right. This is going to have to include all that energy. And what we saw in New York in almost a year ago was this trend that removed a lot of incumbents in the state races. And so a lot of sleepy Democrats lost their seats and injected a DSA movement of candidates into the next legislative body. And so what does that mean? I think this is a perfect opportunity to keep going and installing someone like myself who's going to connect with them at the mayoral level. And the power of the mayoral administration is massive. And I've been seeing that power by confronting it and standing in front of it and saying no to that. And I think it'd be really powerful. So having a kind of left DSA style mayor will also, I think, set us up for taking over the governor's office down the line. And now you have a whole different state pumping out ideas and projects that can go across the country.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned earlier your criticism or opposition to the current mayor, Bill de Blasio. Can you just further contrast the way you would govern as mayor with de Blasio, and also maybe go into Cuomo a little bit, and just the way you think he's...
Were there continuous pissing contest instead of helping the people of New York?
Yeah, exactly, and just the inadequacy of the pandemic response in particular. Before we got on the podcast, you were talking a little bit about the relationship between government and public health and such.
Yeah, I think that both of these guys, de Blasio and Cuomo, have really offered a very kind of old school style of politics, very top down.
Hey, comfy
and
bro.
not at all engaging communities about the future of their neighborhood.
We're just watching this interview with Carlos Menchaca, who's a candidate for the mayor of New York City, and all of us thirsting after his policies because they're so goddamn sexy, along with that killer jawline. Jeez Louise.
Development, about even healthcare and the response to COVID. You've seen that with the start and stop with the schools. Are they closed? Are they open? Last minute decisions. And all that tells me is that there's a small group of people making decisions that are not connected to the ground. My mayoral administration will be how I do work right now as a city council member. I really believe in the power of participatory democracy. I really believe in people having critical information about how things impact them, from zoning to citing new schools and where to spend money. And I think that has just been lacking in both these administrations. And what I was talking about earlier is when international folks look at the United States, like some friends in Australia, and they look at how we're just not following direction, very simple science-based direction about COVID. It's because the communities don't trust government. And we have three reasons in New York: the president, the governor, and the mayor. And when, as a council member on the ground, I'm trying to engage people, I have to break through that distrust and build new trust. And oftentimes that's in other languages. A lot of times information isn't even translated into the language that people speak. And so the message doesn't even get there. These are all things that are going to change because we can do that. We can invest time and effort into building relationships that are real, that if we get into crisis, we can communicate a message that they will listen to, understand, and respond. And I think that's the power of a good public health policy, is trust. And you even saw that with the census. I don't know if you've been looking at the census that was confronted with COVID. We barely made 2010 numbers in New York City. As far as response rates. And that took effort. That took $40 million of effort. And that's because people don't trust government. Yeah. That's the worst thing that we can have right now. And I want to rebuild that.
Yeah, I imagine, are you planning on running as a Democrat, Carlos? Is that?
Yes. So I will be seeking both the Democrat and the Working Families Party line for.
Yeah, the reason I ask is just because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the absolute power of the Democratic Party machine, not just in the state of New York, but in New York City specifically. I mean, this is particularly the mayor race, but other races too. It's been a race that's been auctioned off to the highest bidder, right? And you can see that kind of by who's occupied the office. We can go back to Mike Bloomberg. Bill de Blasio was no stranger to fundraising. Obviously, despite all of his, phony progressive rhetoric, giving that endorsement to Bernie Sanders. Whenever it came to actual boots on the ground policy, he was always with the establishment, always with corporations, and that's kind of what they look for in a New York City mayor, somebody who can kind of talk the progressive talk, get these people out to vote. But at the end of the day, they're going to be pro Wall Street. So I'm wondering, what's your strategy for kind of getting around this essentially money race? And obviously there's limitations to that. I'm wondering if you think that the ranked choice voting is going to play any role in that, and if you're excited to see that dynamic.
So we want to build something very different than any other campaign, and that's the grassroots movement. We're not taking dollars from corporate PACs or developers, and so we're making that very clear.
Yeah, this guy is like head and shoulders better than Yang. Yeah, he's like knocked it out of the park on like every single question.
And people can go on our website right now, carlos2021.com,
link in the description,
and and get connected through donations that can help fuel this campaign. I think that the other part is really kind of showing the work that we've been doing already in the council to say no to jails. I don't know if you heard about the 40.
I have checked out his website. We'll take a look at it on stream ourselves. But the one downside of this website is it doesn't have any of his policies, which is unfortunate. But we'll check it out anyway.
Jails that are on their way to 4 new jails that are on their way to the city council or to the city of New York that are to the tune of $9 billion. I voted no on those. As mayor, I want to talk about how we can take those dollars and ask the city of New York to imagine a new. The real project here is to really stitch together a coalition that wants to see this massive leap away from status quo, that we can start ushering in a whole new government. And I think that the Democratic Party has been so embedded with developers and really kind of corporations that have not just helped them get elected, that are keeping them elected. I'm thinking about Cuomo and how he does his fundraising.
Yeah.
But we've also known that money only goes so far, that we can actually confront all of this in this moment in 2021, because we're not only going to get a new mayor, we're going to get a new
I
controller.
don't know. It's
and
Marxist.
a majority of the city council is about
They
to
couldn't
flip.
stop
And this is why
Alexandria
the DSA is really
Ocasio-Cortez.
interested in building out a caucus
If he's building
in
up a
the city
campaign
council
like that,
to start
he could
shifting this
win.
conversation, so that someone like myself who feels often alone in the city council will no longer be, and we can actually build political power to start shifting not just legislation, but you're going to need a
Especially given that typically only 10% of New Yorkers vote for the mayor. There might be a lot more people voting for him if he can mobilize people effectively.
mayor to really mirror that energy in the city council, which has not been happening in the last 7 years with this mayor. And so you need both, and that's what the real message is to people that are engaged, and that's why we need everybody's low dollar donors in New York City to come in, and from around the world, or the United States anyway, to support this. I think the national conversation needs to look at 2021 in New York and say, if we're going to want things to change in other cities, we can start with New York. New York has the capital to be able to start coming up with new ideas. This is where the laboratory for this next version of America can come from New York City. And that's what makes me really excited about coming in with this.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great plan. And I like that you mentioned the kind of fusion of the city council bench with the hopefully progressive mayor as well. We were just talking with Tiffany Caban, who's hopefully going to be elected to that city council, hopefully to help fulfill some of these policy visions. My last question for you, Carlos, is just obviously you're going to be up against so much money, so much corporate cash in this race. A lot of, I'm sure, really rich billionaires are trying to get this position to, fulfill their ambitions of later becoming president or whatever. It seems like, we just had Bill de Blasio and Michael Bloomberg run for president in the same election cycle, while one of them was still the mayor of New York
Mark
City.
Cuban and Mark Zuckerberg are both going to buy houses in New York City so that they can run for mayor.
Yeah, exactly. So my question is just, especially in a pandemic when you can't really knock on doors as much as usual, what exactly is your strategy to overcome this money deficit and media deficit you'll be up against? And what's your strategy to make some noise, get some headlines, and force the media to cover you and win this race?
It's a lot of things that we're going to throw at this. One is we have a matching funds program. So New Yorkers get matched 8-1. And when I raise the first $250,000, that turns into $2,250,000. And that gives us an opportunity to have a full campaign that we can run that will be competitive. And we're inching towards that now. So that's one. Matching funds is going to give me the opportunity to speak to a lot of New Yorkers.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how does that matching funds work? If you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so this is a program that is available to anyone who's running for office, city council members, and the mayor. And if you raise a certain threshold, and it's different for council members, you get activated into the matching funds program.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's a good way for
And so New Yorkers' dollars get matched 8-1. So if a New Yorker gives me $10, it turns into $90, up to $250. And so that's going to allow me to quickly get to a point where I'm going to be able to be competitive. So that's one. The money issue goes away quickly when enough people come on board. Second is I'm a city council member right now. I have a bully pulpit that I'm going to use to really activate certain issues that people can get involved in now. I think campaigns often feel like there's this like amorphous thing, like, oh, it's just vision. Well, let's get going. Let's do some stuff now. And this is when we talked about the budget. There's some rezonings that we're trying to defeat. Now the industry city failed to gain traction. We're trying to bring that to other rezonings across the city. This is where Tiffany Caban and I were at one in Flushing, New York. And so there's a movement that has action that I want to really demonstrate now. And then really the final thing is making sure that we bring all the energy of the youth of the city and people who are invested in things like the Green New Deal that can get involved with people power. And we're gonna need tons of volunteers. This is why I'm hoping people can sign up on carlos2021.com so that we can get your name and number and get you to help either making calls or literally going out. We're gonna need petition help to get people to sign a piece of paper so that we can get on the ballot. And I think once all that comes together, it's going to be really hard not to listen to our work and see it in motion. And that's what makes me, I don't know, this is what makes me so excited about this race and how different we're going to be from every other campaign.
Well, Carlos, it sounds like you're bringing a lot of ideas that, we certainly at the Vanguard are 100% behind. And, it seems like from the activist energy, the people of New York City are ripe to get behind as well. And we certainly wish you the best of luck in your race. For anybody that's tuning in, please find the link to Carlos's website down below and contribute to his campaign in any way that you can. Like I said, we're based out of Kansas City, so we had hopefully some out-of-towners to contribute a couple bucks if you can. This is an important race, and we had a great time chatting with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach and Gavin, and to the Vanguard.
Yeah, thanks so much.
See you soon. I'll see you again.
Yeah, look forward to speaking to you again, and good luck with your race.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, man. Guys,
I think Carlos Menchaca might be the person I'm gonna be like pushing you guys towards. Like, go the fuck volunteer for this guy. Go like donate to his campaign, especially if you're in New York. We need this guy. We need like just he's good for New York City, but he's also good for the wider politics of the United States. So, this was really good. And unfortunately does not have more views. What the fuck? All right. Well, we're going to change that. I wish I was in New York City so I could vote for him. Let's see here. Here is his website, Carlos Menchaca for mayor. I'm gonna drop it in chat so you guys can check it out for yourselves. Thirst for him, thirst for his ideas, but more importantly, if you're able to do like some calling or something, join the campaign. There's all kinds of submissions here. Let's watch his campaign ad.
Once you have lived in New York and it has become your home, no place else is good enough. John Steinbeck wrote those words 67 years ago. Today, our friends, families, and neighbors lose their homes. To this recession, to this pandemic, to the wealthy developers who rezone our neighborhoods so they can add another zero to their net worth. We can do better. We must do better. That is why I'm running for mayor. As a kid raised in public housing by a single mother, I never imagined I could run for mayor of the greatest city in the world. My mom had only a third grade education and would clean libraries to get by. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo te sientes? I would go with her at 4 in the morning to help her clean and then go to school. These are undoubtedly challenging times, but we must rise to that challenge with a bold progressive plan and not retreat to the status quo that has failed us. I have served on the city council for 7 years, fighting against economic inequality, heartbreaking deportations, and systemic racism. This fight is personal to me. As a gay child of immigrants, discrimination is a pain I know all too well. We need a mayor to stand up to the wealthy and powerful and put our communities first. I love our city, and I love the people. And as mayor, I will fight for you every day. In times like these, we have to look out for each other, check in on one another, and fight for those who can't fight for themselves. We've been down before. Some doubt our ability to come back. But I know New York's brighter day is just around the corner, and we will make it together. Because New York is our home. Paid for by NYC for Carlos.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. So check that out. He's gay. OMG, marry me, please, dear God. Yeah, he's gay. Let's see. So to answer some questions I saw in chat, yes, you can donate if you are not in New York City. It just does not get price matched the way that donations from New Yorkers do. I believe that's the thing.